They said the cove was quiet. No lights, no boats. No reason anyone should be out on the cliffs at dawn. But at 3:17 a.m., something started knocking on metal buoys, and the timestamp on every phone nearby blinked back to 3:17. Again and again. I'm Samnang. This is where we trade comfort for curiosity. Find somewhere dark and quiet. Put your headphones on. Listen closely now. Tonight's story is called The Fog That Keeps Time. Picture the cliff. Black rock. Salt-licked air. Bone-white lichen. A radio hisses in the wind like insects. Somewhere down below, waves court the shore and retreat like a slow exhale. Now, imagine that breath trapped. The first thing you hear is static, then a voice, low and urgent, stuck on a single loop. Then a silhouette on the path, frozen mid-step, like a photograph someone forgot to finish developing.
Who is Mara Hale? She's 32, volunteer park ranger for the Cove Point Reserve, coffee that never gets cold, a battered field jacket with 2 pens and a whistle. She grew up here, small town, quieter summers, loud gulls. She knows every trail marker, every rusted nail on the boardwalk. The Cove pays her in loneliness and an odd kind of trust. Hikers ask for directions, fishermen wave, the sheriff keeps his calls to business hours. On an ordinary Tuesday in late October, a missing persons report came through. Young couple, planned hike at sunrise, last seen turning onto the cliff trail. Mara logged the report, checked the weather, and headed out with the reserve radio clipped to her belt. She expected cold hands and a half-bundled backpack. She did not expect time that refused to move forward. Her first strange moment, a hiker on the ridge, phone lit, mouth moving, frozen mid-call. When Mara got within 10 feet, the man's lips shaped a single word over and over. It looked like moving, but the air around him did not shift. Footfalls did not scatter the lichen. The man's phone displayed 0317. Mara tapped his shoulder. The hand on the phone was warm. The man blinked, and then, blindsided, he was gone, like someone pressed rewind on a stage prop. Radio Unit 1 to dispatch. Repeated visual at ridge. Subject appears immobile. Timestamps returning to 0. Requesting clarification. Over.
Mara thought weather tricks. Fog plays tricks. The Cove is famous for fog that rolls like a secret and devours sound. But then a logbook she left on the ranger table changed. She wrote, checked South Boulder, 0712, coffee cold. Later, when she reopened the book, the time read 0608. She watched ink shift on the page, as if the afternoon was being erased and respoken. You tell yourself you're tired. You tell yourself you didn't sleep last night. Mara told herself exactly those things, until the radio looped a scream she hadn't yet heard.
Repeat, we have a shriek at the lower cove. Subject unknown. Audio repeats every 30 seconds. Personnel confirming same audio from earlier log entry. Over.
The pattern arrived like tide lines. First one impossible thing, then another, then a corridor of them. Search teams followed footprints only to step into their own prints. Phones flashed messages received from themselves an hour earlier. A fisherman came ashore and, under the fog, saw his younger self fixing a net, muttering the same curse about storms. He turned, and the boy looked up and walked away into the past he would remember how to forget. Sleep frayed, people began to report déjà vu with bruises, small domestic things, a mug misplaced, a spoon found melted into the hands of a memory that didn't belong to that morning.
Mara kept a folder of things: police logs, printed radio transcripts, a page of a journal taken from a tent. She drew lines where events overlapped, loops marked like knitting stitches. Each loop had a center, the shoreline, where the fog seemed thickest, and the sea's sound dilated to 2 beats where there should be 1. She started sleeping with the radio aimed at her mouth, as if speaking into it could pull tomorrow toward her. The rest of the town put up warnings, then pulled them down. People want their lives to make sense. They remove warnings like bandages.
The turning point came on a day the fog fell like linen. Mara found a half-submerged cove box, an old wooden crate meant to hold life jackets, its lid warped open to bone. Inside, a child's clock lay on top of wet newspapers. The hands were glued to 0317. The clock ticked softly, insisting on a second that would not become a minute. She recognized the lullaby whistled under the ticking. It was one the town sang at funerals and birthdays. She had heard it before, twice, each time when a voice had cried for help and then been swallowed by the loop.
I found the clock. It's small.
She chose to stay. Others left that morning. They drove with fog lights on and windows sealed, telling themselves they were going to a town that tomorrow would remember differently. Mara walked to the shoreline. She tied her radio to a drift pole and said into it, "If you hear this, answer." It was not bravado. It was a bargaining chip. She had already watched people vanish twice and hoped to catch one of them in a third pass.
The climax is a thing of compressed sound. Imagine seconds stretching like taffy, each heartbeat a long note. The fog presses at the skin, a damp glove. Mara hears 100 echoes of the same footstep. Each time a step arrives, something else subtracts. Lamp posts blink out. A boat loses a rope. A voice forgets its name. Mara reached the place where water should have been, and found instead a mirror of the same shore, offset by an inch in time. On the other side, a child stood with a clock in his hands. On this side, the same child was just a smear of movement that the fog could not hold. She called to him. Her voice went through him like wind through grass.
Unit on shore. Subject attempting retrieval. Fog density increasing. Visual anomalies observed. Multiple temporal signatures in close proximity. Recommend containment and evacuation. Over.
Mara did the only human thing she could. She reached into the mirror and pulled. There's a moment here I want you to feel. No cinematic flourish, just the stretch and brittle pop of something giving way. The child's hands were cold as bait. The clock slipped from his fingers, and for a heartbeat, The hands spun, protesting. Then the clock stilled, and time took a breath and moved forward, once. Something in the fog screamed. It wasn't a human scream. It was the sound time makes when a seam is torn. Mara stumbled back, clutching the clock. The tide returned like an apology. The radio stopped looping the scream and settled for the first time in days on a steady human voice saying one clear sentence. We are okay. We are okay.
The aftermath was not heroic. Records would not line up cleanly. Police reports contained crossed-out times and witness annotations, time discrepancy noted. The team that searched with her reported cold patches and hearing their own names called from radios that were not theirs. Some people could not reconcile a lifetime of small decisions being replayed in front of them and left town with the sort of blank, tremulous relief that looks like amnesia. Mara's testimony read like a weather report laced with delirium. Her handwriting was steadier than her voice. She kept the child's clock in a drawer and wound it once a day, until the spring, when the hands finally turned again on their own.
Years later, the cove is quieter in one way and louder in another. People make signs that say, do not stay in dense fog, do not follow sounds. Tourists still come. Curiosity keeps its own tide. The town has a new ranger rotation and a small shrine of coins and bottle caps at the cliff, tokens left by people who felt time slip beneath their feet and wanted to anchor something valuable in response. But there are stories, small, stubborn things, that refuse the tidy ending. The clock in Mara's drawer ticked forward for months, and then one evening blinked back an hour and set itself to 03:17 for a minute, before settling on the correct time again. A radio in a boat once whispered a name that shouldn't have been said. A lullaby hummed under a storm that never reached land. People say the fog listens. People say the fog keeps time in barter.
If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who listens in the dark. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. Send tips and local oddities to stories@naturesdread.example. If you have one, tell it carefully. Until next time, check the corners.